Hi there, my name is Luke Boulay, and I'm the Government Affairs Manager for Professional Photographers of America, and here I am today in front of the Library of Congress, right across the street from Capitol Hill. We are here today to lobby for the passage of the Federal Interior Lands Media Act, otherwise known as the Film Act. And you might ask yourself, well, what is this? Well, what it is to reduce the burdensome regulations that were being placed on photographers who do work in national parks and other federal lands. So we were pointed out to an issue by our members in Grand Teton National Park where the park was instituting a set of burdensome regulations that would require photographers to obtain name badges. They would have to be CPR certified. They would have to have insurance, which covered them inside the national park. And then they also had to fork over 3 to 5% of whatever they earned in the park. All of which were completely antithetical to the First Amendment photography, which is a protected privilege. And so we've been working with Senator Barrasso and Senator Manchin's office to push forward the Film Act and shift the burden over from commercial, non-commercial photography, which is what the national parks are seeking to regulate, and over to impactful versus non-impactful photography. A person with a camera has no greater impact than an individual with a phone that also has a camera on it. So why should they be treated any different? So the Film Act shifts over these over the burdensome regulations that say the national forests were instituting, and then parks like Joshua Tree or Yosemite National Park or other national parks who all have different standards, different permits, different regulations around how commercial photography, as they put it, is treated on these federal lands. So we wanted to standardize this process. It needed to be standardized. It was frankly wrong for it not to be corrected. So this is why we're working with the Senate, and we've been working on this legislation for over a year now, and we really have this legislation in a great spot. We've reduced the penalty from a criminal penalty down to from 6 months risk in jail down to a civil penalty, and these are all in the legislation. I might add, these are not passed into law, but these elements of the legislation, we worked with these offices to communicate the issues that our photographers were having on federal lands, and we're so appreciative that they were open and willing to get this legislation in a much better spot that actually incorporated that worked around the issues and corrected a lot of the issues that our folks were dealing with. So right now we're working with the House and trying to get the House version in line with the Senate's version, and that way it can pass as a unified bill and go to the President's desk. Right now they're under two different versions. We're really positive that the House version is going to be very in line with the Senate's version. There's a possibility of it going to conference committee, but we're very optimistic that this legislation is going to pass. There's a large support on both sides of the aisle for this nonpartisan legislation, and we might need your help at some point in the future in order to get this legislation across the finish line, which is why we're bringing it to you right now. We don't yet need you to call your members of Congress or call your senators or write letters yet, like we did with the CASE Act back in the day. But we may need you at some point in the future to get this across the finish line. But for now, we're working with the House and we're working with the Senate to try to get this legislation across the finish line. And that way, the burdensome and onerous regulations that are being placed unfairly on photographers are eliminated, and we get back to a posture of, if you make a measurable impact on the land, then that should be permitted. Versus if you're walking in on your own 2 feet and you're taking a photo with a family, and they want a nice photo to put on their wall, or go up in their office, then you shouldn't be treated any differently than someone who hands or someone that receives a phone and the family requests, hey, would you mind taking a picture of us? Because those two situations are exactly the same. The only difference, and what the parks are seeking to regulate, is the commercial aspect, which is completely unfair. Because your First Amendment privilege doesn't stop when you start making money off of your First Amendment protected privilege. Ansel Adams was one of the pioneers for photography in the national parks, and they weren't even national parks back then. They were just lands. And how sad it would be for those lands to not be able to be captured, their majesty not able to be captured because of some onerous regulatory system that somehow treats people differently because they made $100 off of the sale of their photo that they took in the national park. Especially in the age of social media, where it's incredibly hard to quantify how much value is actually earned from one singular photograph. It's much easier to find out how much money you made off of a portrait, but in this age of social media, it doesn't make sense at all, and there's no historical context for it, and frankly, it's unfair, which is why we're trying to get the Film Act passed. We're here reporting, from Washington, D.C., actively working on this. Thank you so much for tuning in today and watching our Capitol Hill update. We look forward to updating you in the future on the progress of the Film Act, and we look forward to this legislation passing and getting across the finish line. Thanks so much.